Good morning, primary class. This is our lesson for Wednesday in our story, Almost Persuaded. Paul and other prisoners were on a ship sailing to Rome. Julius, the Roman officer, was with them. Julius, the Roman officer with them, was a centurion. That means he was in charge of 100 soldiers. They had to change ships at one port, and by the time they got to the port of Fairhaven, winter was coming on and it was getting too dangerous to travel by ship. Paul said they should stay in Fairhaven through the winter, but the centurion and most of the others wanted to go on to a better port, so the ship sailed on. Everything was fine at first, but soon a strong wind began blowing the ship, and the sailors couldn't control it anymore. Acts 27, verse 9 through 15 tell us about that. Now, when much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them, and saying unto them, Sirs, I perceive this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading of the ship, but also of our lives. Nevertheless, the centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than these things which were spoken by Paul. And because the haven was not commodious to winter in, the more part advised to depart thence also, if by any means they might attain to Phenice, and there to winter, which is a haven in Crete, and lieth toward the southwest and the northwest. And when the south wind blew softly, supposing that they had obtained their purpose, losing thence, they sailed close by Crete. But not long after there arose against it a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon. And when the ship was caught, and could not bear up unto the wind, we let her drive. That doesn't sound good, does it? The ship had been pulling their only lifeboat, and the sailors managed to put it up to a safe place. Then they put ropes around the ship to try and hold it together, and when the storm became even worse, they threw heavy things into the sea to make the ship lighter. But nothing helped. Verse 16 through 19 tell us about that. And running under a certain island, which is called Clauda, we had much work to come by the boat, which when they had taken up, they used helps, undergirthing the ship, and fearing lest they should fall into the quicksands, strike sail, and so were driven. And we, being exceedingly tossed with the tempest, the next day they lightened the ship. And the third day we cast out with our own hands the tackling of the ship. Oh my, it seems like it's getting worse and worse. For 2 whole weeks, the strong winds tossed the ship around the wild waves. It seemed that they would all drown. But what did Paul tell them? Verse 20 through 25. And when neither the sun nor the stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope that we should be saved was taken away. But after long absence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them, and said, Sirs, ye should have hearkened unto me, and not have loosed from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of God, whose I am, and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul. Thou must be brought before Caesar, and lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God, that it shall be even as it was told me. Paul warned them that the ship would run into the ground on an island, and sure enough, that night the sailors could tell that they were very near land. Verse 26 through 29. Howbeit we must cast upon a certain island, But when the 14th night was come, as we were driven up and down in Adria, about midnight the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country, and sounded, and found it 20 fathoms. And when they had gone a little farther, they sounded again, and found it 15 fathoms. Then, fearing lest we should have fallen upon the rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern, and wished for the day. The sailors made a secret plan to leave the ship. They pretended that they were letting down the anchors, but they were really letting down the lifeboat so they could get into it and try and escape to land. What did Paul say would happen if the sailors carried out their plans? In verse 30 and 31, and as the shipmen were about to flee of the ship, when they had let down the boat into the sea, under color, as though they would have cast anchors out of the ship, and Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, except these abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved. Okay, now here's your question. Do you think Satan wanted that ship to sink? Why? Was Paul still trusting Jesus? I think he was very trusting, wasn't he? Oh, we'll find out what happens tomorrow.